Hello, once again. This is Antonio, and I'm coming at you with another exciting video. Now, what we are talking about in this video is going to be a little different than what we normally talk about, and this is about Brother Polight. I started watching Brother Polight probably about 7, 8, 9 years ago, something like that. Whenever he came on the scene, battling Sarah Suit and Seti, and that's when I start learning more about a sector of people. Now you got the so-called woke group of people, and then you have the people that you can clearly call uh, Christians. You got the Nuwabians, you got the Muslims. You have so many people, the Pan African, people that call themselves Pan Africanists, Pan Africanists. Um, so it's so many sectors out there. And what I used to do is I used to sit around because Brother Polight was a astute person who loved to battle. And what they used to battle is about knowledge, the knowledge of what they knew. And you clearly see that he was not a dumb person. But I think he let the boldness of his knowledge get to his head because over time, he ended up following in the footsteps of his master teacher, who I really didn't care for because he took direct shots at Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark. Now, whoever watched this video, they clearly can understand what I'm talking about. Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark has never taken shots at any other person who so-called called themselves a master teacher. Now, you might be like, who is Brother Polight's master teacher? Or so-called master teacher, however you want to describe it. And that's Malachi Z. York, one of the biggest cardists in the world. Malachi Z. York, he created his own books. He broke down aspects of the Bible differently than a lot of people. And he let that mindset go to his head. And in the mindset of letting it go to his head, he had a lot of people to follow him. And a lot of people going to see this video and they're not going to probably like the stuff that I say. If you respect Malachi Z. York, then you are on yourself. And why do you say that? Because you gotta, just like R. Kelly, you gotta separate the actions from the music. You got to separate the actions from the knowledge. So some of the knowledge that Malachi Z. York provided was not terrible or bad. It wasn't bad at all. He did things that a lot of people didn't do. One of the people got caught up in that was Wesley Snipes, who actually helped funded some of the sectors in, I think it's Edmonton, Georgia, when Malachi Z. York left and he moved away from New York and he formed a compound. And that is where he got hit with over 150 counts of child. Uh, you can't say the word on YouTube without getting hit. And this, the reason why I'm talking about this Malachi Z. York is because you see that these guys get so caught up in things and they become child predators. All right, so let's talk about this. As reported by the Liberian, I don't want to read everything about Malachi Z. York. Over the months established by courts records, I'm not going to call him doctor. You can call him doctor. Is an African, a global nationalist, international icon, teacher, author, songwriter, and record producer. But we want to get down to what he did. Dr. York is a naturalized Liberian citizen, consul general, diplomatic agent appointed in 1999 by former President Charles Gonkay Taylor, and following his arrest and imprisonment in 2002. Now, think about it. He has been in jail for 21 years, and people are still thinking that he's going to get out of jail. Well, my brother, not only is he not going to get out of jail, he got a cellmate that will be following him soon. And that's this liar, brother Polight. All right. Mitsario 6th Judicial Circuit Court, headed by Judge Yusuf Cabo, who served as the Equus courts and now appointed as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia, came down with the verdict after confirming Dr. York's innocence. Now, these people still think he's innocent, even though all of these people, all of these girls, then came out and said what he has did. Interesting. He was arrested in 2002 and sentenced to 135 years by what his supporters believe was a biased court in Georgia on allegations of racketeering, money laundering, and demand act. No, my brother or sister, this dude, Malachi York, was a pedophile pimp who used his intelligence to take over the mindsets of young girls left and right. He had so many charges of child crimes that they didn't even charge him with all of them. They didn't even charge him with all of them. They did not even charge him with all of them. And what happened is all these people who took pictures with him is when they found out what was happening, because you see that's NDRE right there. And right there, that is Music Soul Child right there. You know, so you clearly see that the people were definitely there for him. I already mentioned Wesley Snipes. He was there for him as well. And who is this right here? Huh? All of these people that you see. Who is this? Right? Is that Russell? Is that Russell? Interesting. In the 1980s, he owned and operated his own record label, recording studio Passion Records and Passion Studios, and York Records and York Studios worked with various artists like Stevie Wonder, Blue Magic, and Lionel Richie, all of whom won't even come out and say iota about this guy, right? Russell Simmons got his own gripes with this Me Too movement, right? As well as being a performer himself, he was part of a trio called Passion, right? They talking about his accomplishments and trying to talk about all the stuff he did. He went to Ghana. He did all of this stuff. And he probably did good things on the surface, right? He probably did good things on the surface. Following 17 years of Dr. Malachi Kabuna, York's 135 years prison sentence at AdMax Maximum Prison Facilities in Colorado for acts said to be grave, the Daily Observer had received a documentary report presenting Washington recanting her testimony she delivered in 2004 against Dr. York. So you clearly see that some of this article is definitely in retrospect to come out for the sake of Dr. York. How you support a person When it say in contrast to her testimony, she told the jury that she was molested at the age of 13 by Dr. York. Washington said Dr. York never forced her to have. Boy, you can't believe, I can't believe what you just put that. I don't know if anyone he has touched. I don't know of any children he had touched. She revealed, I never took children to him for the purpose of touching. Get out of my face. Get out of my face. Let's come over here, though, to this liar, Brother Polight, who a person who had a great mindset. He created books. He had created his own language. He had the ear of the people of the knowledge he had. But now you see the fraud that he is. You could come around here. You could support this clown all you want to. You could come in my comments and talk about him. But this clown is a liar, and I believe everything the mother said he did. Let's play this lie that he posted.
And the prosecution dropped every single sexual charge. I'm saying it again. The mother, the daughter, my accusers, in addition to the state, the prosecution, all agreed they need to drop all of the sexual charges. So yeah, it's a victory, but it's bittersweet. It's a victory because I was facing life. No parole, no probation. Now you may say, how could this be possible if a minor was so-called molested and it was DNA evidence? And people say DNA don't lie. And I always said people do. Well, let's do this. The serologist, the expert that so-called found 6 semen stains amongst a headscarf and a t-shirt. Never mind the fact the whole rape kit said negative, negative, negative. They checked this girl for 5 different types of DNA, finger DNA, all types of different DNA. Checked her vagina, checked her mouth, checked her saliva, checked her excrement, checked her feces, checked her urine. Everything came up negative. You would think because of all the violent acts I was accused of, how I came inside of her, how I came on her face, how I bust her mouth open from penetrating her so physically, that there would be some kind of trace of something, some kind of DNA, but the rape kit came up all negative. So now we're in a conundrum. So how the hell how does the DNA just skip to a t-shirt and a headscarf? Well, the serologist that did the report that labeled it semen stains, when you got high-powered attorneys such as myself, then what happens is when you spend damn near 200 grand on your defense, you have the right to do depositions. We have our own private investigator. We have our own, guess what, forensics expert. So our forensics expert said this. Our forensics expert said, we want to take a look and see what's going on over there. So when our forensics expert took a look and examined these so-called clothes with semen stains, we had some questions about how did you definitively conclude that that was semen in the first damn place? So guess what happens after that? A deposition is when we interview anybody that's part of the situation, whether it be the mother, the daughter, the people who took the 911 call, whoever. The prosecutor gets to sit in while we interview them, while there's a court-appointed stenographer that types up everything. The prosecutor can hear everything as it goes so they can make a determining factor if they got a case or not. Point in case, we couldn't interview the serologist, Stephanie Thompson, because she mysteriously disappears when we want to question her about how she came up with those results. I'll say it again. The person who said that there was semen stains on the headscarf and the shirt, despite the fact the rape kit tested for 5 different DNAs, considering the egregious acts that I was accused of, the rape kit came up all negative, which science would suggest I did absolutely none of the things that I was accused of. Science would suggest I did absolutely none of the things that I was accused of. Science would suggest that. But here's this woman talking about this DNA evidence, and then now when we call her so we can interview her, get a deposition, and have it on record with my attorneys questioning them based on the findings of our forensic expert, she's nowhere to be found. So you know what we could do now? We could file a motion to dismiss the DNA for the case. That's what we could do. Because if we go to trial, we won't be able to cross-examine her because suddenly she disappears. She works for some private company and no one could find her. Now, all the while, the state been giving me opportunities to plead 20 years sexual offender, plead 15 years sexual offender. And I'm like, I wouldn't care if you gave me 1 day in prison. So long as you got that label registered sex offender on there, I'm going to trial. So long as you got that label there, registered sex offender, I'm going to trial because I can never make a plea to something like that. So guess what happens? The state says if we ever want to do interviews, depositions, if we ever want to get a deposition from the mother and a deposition from the daughter, all bets are off. They'll never do an agreement with me. They said they'll never do an agreement. Never do an agreement. Work out an agreement or a plea. I said, I don't give a... My attorneys will tell you straight up, because when you see my attorney video, he's going to tell you straight up. From day one, I said, I'm never doing an agreement to any sexual charges. Interview the mother and the daughter. So they are the last of our depositions. We got the police body cams. We realized that the police report contradicts the affidavit that they did. The affidavit contradicts the interviews that they did on the body cam. So we got 3 contradictions. The story that the mother and daughter tells on the body cam, the stories that they told in the police report, and the stories that they tell on the affidavits. None of them work out. And I'm going to speak about that. But ultimately, we want to interview them. So when we interview them and do our depositions, have the prosecutor sit there, we already know where they're lying. We already know their lies. We looked at each of the 3 different types of lies they said for that night. So guess what's going to happen when we get to interview them? We're just going to ask them questions so they can contradict themselves. So when we go to court, we can ask them which story is true and why did you lie? So the prosecutor hits us again. Well, you know he's going to be facing life. We're in the week now where we got to interview the mother and daughter, get the deposition. So guess what happens 2 days before the mother and daughter are supposed to fly into town for us to get the depositions? They call. After a week ago threatening me, 2 days before the mother and daughter are supposed to fly out, they say, hey, we drop all the sexual charges. Huh? They say we're dropping all the sexual charges. And let me add something to this. Y'all heard this crazy story that I called a grown woman and asked if I could take her 14-year-old girl to a party. And y'all believe that bullshit. But guess what my text messages say? My text messages say, she asked me. Oh, hold on, let's reverse. Do you know that we broke up that same day? And later that, within a day, within 24 hours, she filed a criminal complaint. Let's add some more color to it. Do you know that the same day that I broke up with her, in my text messages is proven, she said she was going to destroy my life. She was going to fuck my whole shit up. So we have motive. Do you know that I wasn't the one that asked to take her daughter to a party after 2 a.m. in the morning? Do you know my text messages say? She contacted me and asked me to take her daughter out to a party after 2 a.m. in the morning, and I vehemently declined because I said, what the hell do I look like as a grown man taking a 14-year-old that obviously looks like a minor to a party? Y'all don't know that, though. All of this is in my text messages. Y'all don't know that, though. So you say, well, then, Polight, then you should be clean. I should be, but unfortunately, the mother turned her daughter in. The daughter got high and intoxicated, and because I'm not the one that turned them in, now we dealing with child abuse and delinquency of a minor. If they could, so I'm like, let's fight it. Let's fight it. So my attorney's like, I just want you to understand that this child abuse in Florida, aggravated child abuse, from the child being intoxicated. They can give you 30 years in prison. I'm like, man, take the goddamn agreement. If, under what circumstances, if they could convince a jury that whether you gave her alcohol or you was aware that she was high at any point in time and you didn't turn her in, but since the mother did, you could be subject to 30 years. So I said, let's make a goddamn agreement, man, and let's work this thing out. So still got to sit down somehow, some way, but it is what it is. Blessings in abundance is bittersweet. Oh my goodness. And more information is going to come out, and this shit is far from over for all the lies that was told on me.
Nah, Polight, you the one that's telling a lie. Now, you sound convincing, right? You sounded convincing in a lot of what you just said. And I'm not a person that rains on anybody's birthday, but Polight, you got sentenced. You got sentenced for 7 years. All right, let's play that. All right, you were sentenced for 7 years in jail. You are a registered sex offender now. So you did all that barking left and right. Brother Polight sentenced to 7 years after pleading guilty to sexual battery of a minor. He also received 10 years probation and fines in the six figures. It is just me. Is it just me, or did the majority of the conscious community on YouTube turn out to be fraud or deviant? Now, certain things you don't want to read. You did all of that barking in this now. And a lot of people probably, if they look at this video, they're going to come and they're going to try to defend you, brother. But you was sentenced to 7 years in jail. All of that barking, you say, oh, I don't want to be a registered sexual offender, but you are. You are.
By up to 15 years state prison. Count 2 was lewd and lascivious molestation on a child. 12 to 16 years, a second-degree felony, punishable by up to 15 years state
charges.
Prison. Lewd and lascivious conduct on a child under 16 by a defendant 18 or over, a second-degree felony, punishable by up to 15 years state prison. Count 4, lewd and lascivious exhibition on a child under 16 years, defendant over 18, a second-degree felony, punishable by up to 15 years state prison. And contributing to the dependency of a child, a first-degree misdemeanor, punishable by up to 1 year in jail. And then count 6 is interference with custody, a third-degree felony, punishable by up to 5 years state prison. The state has now filed an amended information today, charging you with the following: aggravated child abuse, great bodily harm, a first-degree felony, punishable by up to 30 years state prison. Count 2 is aggravated child abuse, great bodily harm, a first-degree felony, punishable by up to 30 years state prison. And contributing to the dependency of a child, a first-degree misdemeanor, punishable by up to 1 year in jail. It is my understanding that you wish to plead guilty to this new information.
Now, did you hear that? He's about to plead
guilty.
guilty.
Adjudicated guilty, and your sentence has been memorialized in a 4-page plea agreement. Did you have the opportunity to go over this plea agreement with your lawyer?
Yes.
Okay. I do need
That's Brother Polight saying yes.
Each page, because
the deviant
are not initials on these pages. All right. Let me know when it's done.
Boy, that nigga gonna have a rough time in jail.
That's Polight pleading
Yes,
guilty. You talking about, oh, she didn't send me the text message. I said, why would
now,
you
it
be
is my
sending text
understanding,
messages
Mr.
with a
Nowak,
15-year-old in the first place?
You have gone over this plea agreement with your lawyer, and I want to go over it with you, not each and every aspect of it, but the major components of the plea agreement. But what I am going to ask is for the state to tell me the general terms of the plea agreement, and then we will go into the details on the contract. Go ahead.
Your Honor, the plea agreement includes an adjudication, 7 years of state prison, followed by 10 years of reporting probation.
You heard that,
As a
right?
condition of probation, the defendant
It's
will,
what you say, 10 years.
10 years reporting probation. The defendant
Supervised
will complete the MPSO
probation.
program. The defendant will not be allowed to have unsupervised contact with children. The defendant will have specific terms regarding where he may work and the ability to wear a uniform. There are additional terms of restitution, of which $5,000 has been agreed to be paid upfront within 24 hours, mailed to the victim, and additional restitution to be paid out on a monthly basis once he is out of custody. And that monthly amount is highlighted in the written terms of the plea agreement. Additionally, there will be a stay-away order from victim TS and her mother, which is also mentioned in the plea agreement.
What is the total amount of the restitution?
The total amount of restitution is $25,000.
$25,000 is the total amount
All right.
that he's going to have to pay. He wrote a lot of books. I hope these books pay off for him.
Yes, Your Honor. Okay. All right. Okay, so Mr. Nowak, the terms of the plea agreement are as what the prosecutor just stated, that you are going to be entering a plea of guilty to the 2 counts of aggravated child abuse and 1 count of deliberate contributing to the delinquency of a minor. You will be adjudicated guilty, which is a criminal conviction on your record. Do you also understand, sir, that by entering into this plea that it may subject you to involuntary civil commitment proceedings set forth in Florida statutes 394.910 through 394.931? Do you understand everything that I've said thus far?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I
And
want
he
to also
understands
advise you,
everything
sir,
she
that
said
you
so
are
far.
going to be sentenced to 7 years in state prison, to be followed by 10 years of reporting probation. In addition to any of these special conditions of probation, you will also participate in and successfully complete a mentally disordered sex offender treatment program.
Mentally
That
disorder
you are also
sexual
not
offender
eligible.
agreement.
Okay, you may, according to the state, you may be eligible for early termination if all of the conditions of your probation have been completed, that you have had no violations of your probation, and that you have not been arrested for any other criminal offense. Is that correct, State?
And to clarify, the terms stated in 5 is there is no prohibition on early termination. However, there is a requirement that any modification to this agreement be agreed by the state and the court.
Okay. All right, sir. Now, with respect to this plea agreement, I have on each page next to defendant's initials MN. Did you in fact affix those initials to each page?
I did.
And have you reviewed each and every component of this plea agreement going through page 1 and through page 4?
I have.
Now it says on page 4, having read the above mentioned terms of this plea agreement and having been advised by my counsel, David Terrace, I, Michael Noak, freely and voluntarily enter into this plea agreement and agree to abide by all terms and conditions of this plea agreement, and agree that failure to comply with any terms or conditions within this agreement constitutes a violation of probation and subjects me to be sentenced to the statutory maximum penalties provided by law for the crimes for which I am now pleading guilty. And then it has a signature over the name Michael Noah. Is that in fact your signature, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right. And I am now going to place my signature on this plea agreement, in that I am now going to be ratifying this plea agreement as negotiated between the state of Florida and your attorney. Has anybody, including your lawyer, told you anything differently than what I've just told you?
No.
Are you under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or medication affecting your ability to understand me?
No.
Is anybody forcing, threatening, or coercing you to enter into this plea?
No.
Do you understand that if you're not a United States citizen, the entry of this plea will have negative immigration consequences, including deportation and removal?
Understand.
You had the right, sir, to have gone to a jury trial where your lawyer had the ability to compel the attendance of witnesses on your
Now
behalf.
he just said that he wanted to do a jury trial.
And cross-examine the witnesses and evidence against you. You had the right to testify just like any other witness or remain silent, and your silence could not have been used against you if you went to a jury trial. You also had the right to appeal any mistakes that I would have made during the course of the trial, and the right to hold the state of Florida to the burden of proving these charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand, sir, that by entering into this plea, that you are giving up all of these rights and we will not have a jury trial?
I do.
Have you discussed this plea with your lawyer?
Yes,
Has he answered all of your questions?
absolutely.
Are you satisfied with your lawyer's services and advice?
Definitely.
Did the state provide all the discovery in your possession to the defense?
Yes.
Did the defense review all of the discovery in your possession with your client?
Yes, Your Honor.
And do both sides know of any physical evidence containing DNA that would exonerate the defendant?
No.
No, Your Honor.
And do both sides stipulate to a factual basis for this plea?
Yes.
That's stipulated.
And the court has reviewed the arrest affidavit, makes a finding that there is a factual basis for the plea. Mr. Noak, are there any witnesses or is there any evidence that you wanted your lawyer to investigate or me to receive before entering into this plea?
No.
All right. The court finds that the defendant understands the nature of the charges against him and the consequences of this plea, that he has been represented by competent and effective assistance of counsel with whom he says he is satisfied. I find the defendant has knowingly, voluntarily, and intelligently waived his rights. All statutory fines, court costs, and surcharges will be assessed. Counsel, do you waive PSI?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Now, Mr. Noack, you do understand, as I mentioned to you before, that the state, as they had articulated earlier, you may be eligible for early termination as long as certain conditions are met. That means no violations. You've done everything that you were supposed to do.
All right, so we're going to stop it right there. Now, I did that on purpose. I talked about the so-called master teacher, Malachi Z. York, first. Yes, in certain cases, people will talk good about Malachi Z. York. Also, I want to play Brother Polight's statement first, how he spreaded those lies like mayonnaise. So I wanted to post that. Then I want to turn around and post about his guilty proceedings and how he was not under the drugs influence or none of that stuff. And he definitely knew what he was answering. This dude is a pedophile. The lady was telling the truth. And the daughter most likely was telling the truth. Brother Polight is a scumbag. Now, I know people going to probably, his followers who think that he's innocent, he pleaded guilty and he's now a sex offender and he will be under supervised proceedings under any children, and he got to register as a sexual offender. So you heard that for yourself. Now, this is Antonio with Team Tiggio. Please like, comment, subscribe. And once again, we will see you in the next video. We're going to stay on top of different stories, so subscribe to the channel. We want to grow the platform. And once again, we will see you next time.